When our skin gets cut or scraped or injured in some way, and it starts to heal, something strange happens to the place where that wound occurred. It's a process. At first it bleeds. A bleeding wound tells us that there's something obvious that happened there, and it needs to be addressed. Everyone can see it, notice, and sympathize with a fresh or bleeding wound. Like, man, how did you do that? After the bleeding stops and the blood clots, and a scab starts to form, you're healing. It's better than it was, but maybe still a bit painful and itchy. At some point, when enough time has passed and the body has done its job, the scab falls off, and only the scar remains. That scar is the only witness, and maybe sometimes reminder of the trauma that happened there. That spot on your skin will always look different the rest of your life. The tissue is forever changed, and it'll even act differently than the rest of your body if you wound it again. Maybe that's how our mind and emotions work too. We get hurt, stop the bleeding, and eventually heal, but always just a little different than we were before. Forever changed with invisible scars that no one else can see. Sometimes they make us wiser and stronger, and sometimes, well, they make us weaker. From the Redacted Podcast, I'm Matt Bender, and this is Murdering Malachi, Part 5. I'm gonna scar you for life. If you haven't already figured it out, Malachi has been arrested. He's also been to jail. That is unfortunately a symptom for many of a life lived through the illness of abuse and addiction. I wanted to hear his full rap sheet, so to speak, and about some of his experiences in jail. Trigger warning for violence in this episode. Also, if you haven't listened to parts 1 through 4, go back and check those out. But without further ado, here's Malachi.
So what I want to talk about is my time in jail. The main conversation is going to be about the year I spent in Philadelphia, because that is a journey unto itself. But to get there, I just want to give a brief chronology of my interactions with being arrested and jail. Now, 99.9% of my jail activity was basically just possession. That's pretty much like I wasn't the criminal type. Even in my addiction, I was a con artist. You know, you gave me money and you thanked me for the opportunity to give me money. I was that guy. I had you feeling good after you gave me money. But early in when the addiction was just starting to take over, and I think I was still working as a stripper, but it was starting to get out of hand, and it was new to it. So I didn't, when you're new in it, you kind of fall fast, and then you level out. Like, what kind of addict am I going to be? But in the beginning, you kind of do stupid stuff. And so I had taken $20 out of the purse of some girl I was staying with, and she tried to stop me. She was like, "No, you're not going out, whatever, give me my money back." And I pushed her, but not like hard, not violent, not just more like, "Get off me, girl, I'm going to get you high," kind of thing. And she fell into the bed. And I even pushed her because I knew the bed was there. It wasn't like, "Let me push you and wherever you land, you land." It was like, "Oh, there's a bed. Let me get her off of me." So she was upset, called the cops, and so there was a warrant for my arrest for like an aggravated assault. Like I said, I pushed her onto the bed just to get off me. I'm not condoning it. I'm not saying, "Hey, go around pushing women to get off of me." I'm just saying that's all it was. So you can look at that however you want to look at it. I own up to what I do. So one day I was even getting further and further in the mess. I was at a gay bar, and I think I pickpocketed some guy who had a wedding ring on. I'm not proud of it. This is the early days of my addiction where I was sort of figuring out I don't even know if I was figuring out. I was just kind of crazy. Maybe it was like a 6-month stint where I was like, oh, wow, I really need this drug. And I don't know what to do because I really, really need it. Let me go out and find a way to get this drug. And as I left the bar, he came running. Oh my God, he's got my wallet. And my mind is telling me he's in a gay bar and he's married. He's not going to press charges. But he came screaming out, and I'm running down the street. Somebody tried to trip me. I hurtled over him. Cops are chasing me. I'm smoking them. They're nowhere near me. I stopped to rest. I hid somewhere. They came caught up, and I stupidly got up from where I was hiding, ran some more. They chased me some more. Finally, I got tired of running because I was drunk as dog dirt, too. That's another part of it. That's another part of it. It was in that first like 6 months where I drank a lot, too. Because drinking ended very quickly for me because I didn't like hangovers and I didn't like stumbling. And like drinking for me, I still drink now, but drinking now is more like a glass of wine with dinner once every 5 months. Maybe I'll have a cocktail at lunch once every 4 months and don't even finish the cocktail. But back then, that was part of the exploration, part of the sort of like, what's going on? What am I doing? And I was stone cold drunk. I finally stopped. The cops caught me. I think they put me on the ground, but I don't think they were unduly rough. And then the guy walked up and he refused to press charges, just like I knew he would. Like you could see him look at it like, oh shit, how am I going to explain this? But they found some coke in my pocket. So they arrested me and I got to the jail. And then they were like, hey, have you ever heard of this such and such person? And I was like, oh, fuck, now what? Because she was actually kind of a loon. And they're like, oh, she's charging you with A, B, C, and D. Are you fucking kidding me? So the possession charge, I would have been released that night. But because of her charge, they took me to jail. I was only in jail for like a week, if that long. And then, I had a lot of connections back then because like I know how to live in the big city. I've got an uncle who's a huge lawyer. I've got friends who are judges because you work out at the same gym. Here I am, this kid from the ghetto is getting high and I'm friends with judges, but that's just kind of the nature of my life. So people making calls and they're calling her, and basically she refused. She didn't press charges because it was a bullshit case, and the best you could get. I don't even know if you could get a charge out of that. I just pushed her off me. Maybe a simple robbery for the $20. But all in all, it was like, ain't none of this worth it. But they put me on probation for the cocaine. Now I was on probation for a year, but I kept fucking up. Because that's when I was gone. That's when I was out there just, early in my addiction, and I was stripping, partying, getting high. And I'd get hot urines. I wouldn't show up. And again, I had all of these friends who would call probation officers, be like, I'll give him another chance. He's a friend of ours. And, I don't, we'll call your boss if you don't. All of that. I had 3 probation officers in 1 year because they kept quitting. They kept being like, yeah, I'm not dealing with this. I can't. My hands are tied. The kid does whatever he wants. I'm 24, 5, something. And they're just like, he does whatever he wants. We can't punish him. I quit. Finally, 2 weeks. I think it was 2 weeks before my probation was over. I had another hot urine. And I had this short, 4-foot tall Jewish probation officer who just was no nonsense whatsoever. And he actually arrested me. And I was like, what? Yeah, I was supposed to do a 30-day violation. They sent me to the jail, and I ended up doing a year. They wouldn't let me out because somebody talked to somebody was like, look, if we let this kid out, he's just going to do the same old shit. And calls are going to be made. So somehow, some way, 30 days turned into a year. They just left me there. Now, before I talk about that time, I'm going to say I've had multiple charges after that. Almost all possessions, almost all, I was released the same day. They were like, here's a possession, here's your ticket to go to court, and I'd get either another probation or I'd get a fine. Nothing ever came of it, except when I was in LA, I got arrested in a drug sting. And I actually was with the drug dealer. So the short version is I was facing 3 years because I got caught with the drug dealer who I didn't know from a can of spray paint. And I told him straight up, his drugs, don't know him. He's the one, blah, blah, blah. Because I'm not doing 3 years for getting high. And so, yeah, I didn't know the guy. So it wasn't any kind of like, oh, you're snitching on your. I'm like, fuck that. I don't know this dude. All he is the guy that gave me crack. I'm doing 3 years. Uh-uh. Him. And I ended up doing like 2 months. And I got like 3 years probation, which technically I'm kind of still on. But that's another story. It's a weird thing. I'm in like this limbo state right now. Or if I go to California, I might get in trouble. But basically, I'm not allowed in California. Like I can walk into a police station right now, tell them my name, and they're like, you know, you're not allowed in California, right? Like, yeah, I know. They get you right. I know. We don't want you. We don't care. No one does. But if you go to California, because I never finished the probation, it's basically what it is. I never finished the probation because I was still being a mess up. So that's kind of something that lingers. Like I'm not allowed in California, but no one else gives a damn about me. And so, yeah, that's pretty much that. Like, you know, been a few years since I've gotten any addiction charges. So that aspect of my life, you know, by God's grace is gone. But I want to go back. So all a bunch of possession charges. California was dangerous drugs. So it's kind of like I was with the drug dealer, but so it basically is still possession. When I went to Philadelphia jail, I had never been in jail before. I had not yet come into my manhood. I was a late bloomer because of all the abuse and all the bullying. I kind of knew I was strong. I kind of knew I was capable, but I had no thug in me, even though I grew up in the ghetto, because I hated the thugs. I wanted to be everything I could that wasn't a thug, because to me, they were just these filthy human beings I didn't want anything to do with. To this day, I still hate rap music because it represents just everything that bullied and beat and raped and hurt me. So I didn't want to be thug. And that's kind of the worst way to go into jail, is not wanting to be thug. So, and I was still like kind of afraid of violence. I still got sick to my stomach when I saw fights. Like I wanted to throw up if I saw someone fight. Something I used to suffer with a lot, especially growing up in the hood where you see a fight every day. And I'm getting sick to my stomach. And so I was like, this is going to be a bad situation. So I was in jail and they put me in a dorm with like 30 guys in one cell.
And just to paint this, is this the county jail?
This is county jail in Philadelphia. There's like 4 or 5 county jails. I think I was in D.C., the detention center.
Okay.
I don't remember all of them.
And this is maybe in the early 90s, late 80s, something like that.
Early 90s. I was like 25, 26, somewhere around there. So like mid 90s.
Okay.
And I was a late bloomer. So like 25, I was just starting to get into my manhood. I mean, I was fucking everything that walked. You know, your wife wanted me more than she wanted you. I was the stripper. So sex, I was basically a porn star. But violence and thug and manhood, I still hadn't found yet, which is funny because I'm like twice as strong as men my size. I'm twice as strong as men twice my size. And come to find out, you know, well, no, not come to find out. I mean, I was a wrestler. I made a national team in Sambo. So I knew how to fight. I just didn't know I had the right to fight. Because all my fights growing up, I never was allowed to fight. Because it was either me versus 3 people or me versus 4 people. It was like, because no one wanted to lose to the white guy. So the concept of me being allowed to fight, the concept of me not getting hurt in the fight, the concept of me having a fair fight, the whole concept of fighting was foreign to me because it had been put into my head that you're going to lose under any, whatever circumstances, you're going to lose. We can't let you win. And that was beaten into my head. So I was afraid to fight. I was 25 years old, strong as a fucking ox, skilled fighter, and I was terrified of fighting because it was beaten into my head my whole life. You're going to lose no matter what we have to do because we can't let the white guy win, even though I'm biracial. But that's just the way it is. So at 25, I was basically a coward. You know, your wife wanted me more than she wanted you, but you could be 4 feet tall and I'm still scared of you. Because I still had this ingrained lesson in my head that I'm going to lose. One way or another, they're going to make sure I lose. So I went to the county jail. And let me paint the picture for you. First of all, when I went to LA County Jail, and with most jails, not prison, jail. Most jails are run by deputies. That's like a rotation they have to do. They get out of the whatever police academy, they have to do like a year in jail. Or maybe they have to come back and do, I don't know, but a lot, they incorporate jail rotations into your duty as a deputy. Philadelphia County jails don't have deputies. They have strippers and gas station attendants working as the prison guards or the jail guards. I know because one girl there was saying, hey, she's a stripper. She works on this place on the weekends. Another guy's like, hey, that's my cousin Mookie. He worked at the gas station last week. Now he's a jail guard. They go through some like 2 weeks of training and they're jail guards. So they're the most unprofessional, ghetto, broken human being. You think prison guards that you see in those 1940s movies that are just like sadistic and evil, and they're nothing compared to Philadelphia jail guards. They get the absolute worst pieces of human garbage you can find, and they put a badge on. I was in the jail in a dorm, and with my PTSD, I think I couldn't sleep for like 3 weeks because of the noise. These 20-year-olds stay up. They take shifts. I'm going to stay up all night hollering and screaming, and then you're going to stay up all night hollering and screaming. That's literally what they do. And I had a psychotic break, and I almost cut my leg off with a razor blade. Like, I cut my leg off 4 times. I walked downstairs with a towel, and I showed somebody else. I was like, hey, look what I did. Like, I literally had a psychotic break. Not from fear. It wasn't the cowardice. It wasn't the, oh my God, this is jail. It was the lack of sleep. It was literally just the noise. Jail, and that's why I'm terrified of jail now. Not because of fights, not because of stabbings, not because of the violence. I mean, I don't want that, but I can handle it. Bring it, dog. It was because of the noise. It's the non-stop, 24/7 noise in jail. And depending on what section you are, the lights don't ever turn off either. So it's nonstop lights, nonstop noise. Your mind can never shut off. And for someone with severe PTSD, they ended up strapping me down in a cell in 4-point restraints, legs stitched up. So I'm butt naked, 4-point restraints in a cell, inside a cell. I was as locked up as a human being could be, with like 100 stitches in my leg. They sent me to the medical ward where I got a private cell. And the medical ward is basically all the transgenders, all the psychopaths, all the senior citizens, and all the medical issues are all in one big, long room with private cells. So you got the young psychopaths with the 80-year-olds. You got the schizophrenics with the heart conditions, all in one big room. And that's where I spent pretty much the majority of my time. Now, I want to tell you about 2 things. There's a couple things that happen in jail that are really odd to me. One is grown-ass men are addicted to cartoons. Don't ever turn off their cartoons. That's their thing. Dog-ass motherfuckers love cartoons. Another
I've
thing,
never heard that one.
they love their cartoons.
Huh.
Cartoons and soap operas.
Okay.
Cartoons and soap operas, they're their thing. And the weird stuff that they do, like I'm sitting here watching, and some of this was while I was still in the dorm, and some of it, if it's specific to the Met unit, I'll say that. But I remember I was in the dorm, and the guys were all standing around on TV. Now, Philly jail, you don't have anything. This is jail. Jail, the longest you'll stay in jail in Philadelphia is 3 years. The average stay is a year. Jail is either holding time for you while you're in trial, and then you get your sentence, or it's for all the misdemeanors. So you'll get like 30 days in jail. You'll get a year in jail. Anyone who gets more than a year is probably there because they're in the middle of a long trial. So a year is typically the sentence. Anything above a year, you're waiting on trial. So 2 or 3 years are rare. Those are the people who are fighting, like those are the murder suspects, or those are people who are like fighting for their life, and their trial goes on like they're, you know what I mean? Those are the ones that are in a long ass battle for their life. The average person in a Philadelphia jail is there for between a year and 18 months. I would say the average stay is a year. You would think that that wouldn't create certain behaviors, but they're all standing around a TV. You don't get TVs in your cell. You don't get no amenities. No amenities. The only thing you get is there was a Catholic guy who'd run around, who'd walk around, and I know in the med unit he did this. I don't know about the dorms, but I know he would go from cell to cell and ask you what book you'd like, and he would go out and they would buy the book for you. They'd bring it in for you. I mean, no Playboy or nothing, but like they would get me. I would ask for Dostoevsky or something like that, and I'll explain that one later. That was an interesting story. The guys would stand around, and they have two TVs, and they would show two movies a day, and the movies would pretty much be the most violent, sex-based movies you could possibly imagine, which was so weird to me. Like they would get the hood movies. They're like drug dealer movies with titties and shooting and killing. These are the movies they would show, which to me was like, you're just feeding the beast. And that's what they did. The guards would arrange fights between inmates. Like they would literally lock two inmates in the dorm, get everyone out, be like, if y'all want to do this, do this. And the inmates would just beat each other half to death, and the guards would stand there watching. The guards would beat you up. The guards would take the inmates that did whatever they perceived as wrong. They did it to me once, but thank God it was only a female guard. Like I said something to a female guard who was just a horrible gremlin of a human being. I mean, just abusive as hell. And I made the mistake of saying something back to her. And so they escorted me to a cell. They put me in a cell, and they had me stand against the wall. She came in and she just started slapping the shit out. Now, I knew better than to do anything because I saw the big manly, big angry gorilla looking motherfucker standing behind her like, yeah, go ahead, try something. And they had this thing called rotation. This one kid actually hit the female guard, and they beat him so bad that he was busted open and bleeding. So they hid him in the system. They had this thing called, I forget the phrase for it, but they would hide you. They would transfer you from jail to jail to jail to jail, so your family can't find you until your wounds heal. So they like smashed his head into the bar, split his head open, beat him down, and then they transferred him from jail to jail to jail for like a few weeks until his wounds healed enough and he understood the assignment, which is to say that another inmate did it. So his family didn't see him for like a month or two. And that's what they would do if they beat you too badly. Some kid stole potato chips. I remember I was sitting in a medical unit. That was a famous place for them to do it. That was their hiding spot. And you saw like these 3-4 guards just calmly walking down the aisle. There was an inmate in between them. And he's just calmly walking, no drama, no nothing. Like he knew the assignment. They walked into the cell. Pat, 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 pat. He only stole some potato chips, so it wasn't like a deadly beating. And then they just walked back, and they all just walked out. That was a common occurrence to see the walk. I was in a cell, and we had this one guy who was this black guy, nicest guy in the world, but he was like 400 pounds of all muscle. I mean, this dude looked like Brian Shaw, like one of the world's strongest men, black guy. And I remember they did the same thing to him. They just walked him into the cell, and all you heard sounded like the guns were going off because they got the biggest guards they could possibly find. And they did like no damage to him because like 2 minutes later, he was standing at the cell door hollering, "Yeah, you ain't do nothing to me." But the sound of the blows were like a fucking nuclear explosion. They tried their damnedest to hurt this guy, and they couldn't. I mean, the guy was a man mountain. But that's what they walked into the cell, beat him up, came out. That was a common occurrence in the Philly jail. Is either you're fighting other prisoners, or the guards are beating you up. I got into a few fights myself. I would purposely watch fights because I had to get up my tolerance. I had to get rid of this weakness I had. And I remember one specific, none of my fights really went too far. They were all broken up except for this one fight. And I found out something about myself that I realized I've done my whole life. There was this guy who was about the same size as me, wasn't a particularly great fighter. I really had no interest in fighting him. Like, I don't even know how we got to this point, but he came into my cell and pretty much was like, let's fight. And I don't know, just let's fight. So we started fighting, and I got him on the ground. His head is stuck under the toilet, and I'm punching away on his face, and I'm yelling for the guards. I'm like, CO, CO, CO. Because I had no desire to hurt this kid. I wasn't angry at him. I don't even know why I was fighting him. Like, why the fuck are we fighting? You know, like, what is the point of all of this? But I'm pounding away on him. I'm calling for the COs. And the COs, they come to the door, they start laughing and they walk away. And something in me snapped. Now, I hate that phrase, but it did. And I went back to the first time I ever fought, I was a kid. And this is one of the reasons that I was a coward for so long. My very first fight was against 3 kids. I was like 12 years old, 12 or 13 years old. One of the kids was supposedly my friend, but he did, like I said, he joined the group. And I had to fight 3 kids. And I beat the living hell out of them. I beat them so bad that I had one, but 2 of them ended up running away. I had one on the ground, now scraping his arm on the concrete. Because something in me had said, you're making me fight. I'm going to scar you for life for this shit. As a 12-year-old, I was like, you're making me fight. And there's something about making me fight when that's the last thing on this planet I want to do. You're going to suffer. And I was scraping his arm across the concrete. And his parents had to pull a bunch of adults. They pulled me off because, of course, I was winning. You know, if it was the other way around, we know how that goes. But the guy who looks white was winning in the hood. We can't have that. So back to jail. When the guards walked away, leaving me in there, fighting this guy, it was the same feeling. Everybody is making me fight. And I took my fingernail and I dug it into his face and raked down as hard as I could. It was actually so bad that a couple of kids, or men, not kids, came to me later and asked me why I stabbed him. Like, why'd you stab that guy? You ain't have to stab him. I'm like, I didn't stab him. That was me. Because again, everyone made me, even the guards made me fight. You know, I guess they had never seen someone winning calling for help. Because in their world, if you're winning, you don't call for help. You ask people to go away so you could finish killing somebody. I didn't want to hurt him. I didn't even want to fight him. But they made me. Someone had to pay. So yeah, there's that. Now, there was a few other fights. There was just a lot. There was just a lot of violence. Just so much violence. I mean, there was just so. But there was no stabbings. There was only one hit with a broomstick. But there was no weapons. I don't know how that managed to happen, but they didn't do the weapons thing. It was just a lot of physical beatdowns. There was a lot of one-on-ones. There wasn't too much jumping except the guards. The guards are the only ones that jump people. The prisoners actually did manage to at least do one-on-ones. I'll give them that much. There wasn't a lot of jumping. There was a lot of unfair one-on-ones. Like, why are you fighting that dude? Like, dude can't even fight back and you're beating him up. There was a lot of that. But again, at least it was only one guy beating up this dude that, like, dude, what the fuck are you, he's helpless. Why are you beating him up? A lot of that, a lot of cowards, a lot of fucking a lot of cowards in jail. There was a few big guys, but they typically avoided fighting each other because no one actually wanted to take a chance at taking a loss. There was also, though, I'm going to tell you that I had probably the funniest, I don't even know what it was, but the biggest laugh I've ever had was in jail. I was sitting at the table. I was sitting at the table with the old heads, the guys who were 60, 70, who you knew spent their entire life in and out of jail. Like, this is who they were. They didn't know anything else. And so nothing bothered them. They didn't fuck with the young boys because they knew the young guys were crazy, trying to prove something. They just sat at the table playing spades all day, every day, and coming up with some of the funniest jokes, coming up with some of the, I remember one time, I don't even know what the joke was, but we were on the floor, almost passed out, stomachs hurting. There were like bodies of senior citizens laying on the floor, gasping for breath, because that was all they had. That laughter, that moment of peace, it's the only joy they ever had. The only peace they ever had was sitting at a metal table in a jail, playing cards, laughing. I do remember one. It's not going to seem that funny to you. or anyone. You kind of had to be there. But I remember there was this one. There were two of them. There was one guy who had just kind of got dumped by his boyfriend or whatever, in the medical unit. And I think he said to himself, he's like, how pathetic am I? I can't even keep a faggot in jail. I, we all lost it on that one. Like, that's pretty fucking pathetic. And I think the other one was the guy had gotten a blowjob from one of the trannies. And people were ribbing on him. They're like, dude, why it's a dude, and well, yeah, it looks like a girl, but it's still a dude, blah, 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 and everybody's ripping on him. And the guy goes, you don't understand, man. I've been locked down. It's been a minute. I needed that, man. That ain't, that ain't gay. That's jail, which is a whole other conversation. That's a whole other conversation. But he was like, and one dude looked at him. This might have been the one where we fell down. I'm not sure. But one dude looked at him stone cold as he's in the middle of this 5-minute rant about how desperate he is, how long it's been. He's locked down. It ain't gay. It's jail. The guy looks at him and says, dude, you've only been here a week.
Was it true?
It was true.
Oh, shit.
We all because we forgot. People come in and out, so we forgot. And then it dawned on us like, holy shit, he has only been here a week.
Man. What's going to happen after a month and a year?
He's going to be the one with the lipstick, like, that shit was like, motherfucker, he's only been here a week, and he's talking about, it ain't gay, it's jail, I'm desperate. Like, okay. It's a week, dog. I've gone longer not jerking off. I mean, come on now, Speaking of that, so there was a couple girls that were really sexy. There's one Indian, she's Native American or something, gorgeous. And there's another girl that's a black chick. She was sexy too. One day she's making rounds. We're on lockdown, and I think I just finished showering. I'm standing in my towel. She comes to my cell, and I hear her, and I kind of turn. I look at her because you always got to make eye contact. You got to see that like you're alive, even if you're standing. You got to make eye contact. So I turn and look at her, and then she's still standing there. And I'm like, huh? And then she looks down in my crotch area while I'm in my towel, and she's just standing there. So I'm like, okay. So I kind of like motion, like I don't want to get beat up for this. So I'm kind of motion like, you want to see this? And she's just like, mm-hmm. So then I open my towel and I start shaking my shit. And she's just standing there smiling like, okay. And she walks away. The next day, some male guard comes to me and he's like, was such and such was there guard at your cell last night? Now, mind you, I'm not saying shit. Because obviously he heard part of the story. Obviously, she went and told her friends, like, hey, this motherfucker had a dick on him. But I'm not saying, no, I don't know what you're talking about. We're no guard in my cell last night. Because either she's going to get her friends to beat my ass for telling, or he's going to get his friends to beat my ass for being jealous that this sexy-ass guard wanted to see my dick. But that's how that went. So yeah, I'm giving strip shows. Now, I want to talk about the suicide. There was this little, and I kind of gave away the ending, but there was this little Irish kid that came in. Not kid, he was like my age, 20 something, mid 20s, short, ugly, weird looking dude, and like he was just out of place. And not that I was Mr. Cool, but I'd been in there for a minute, so I kind of, learned a thing or two. And I kind of befriended him because I felt sorry for him. I first felt sorry for him the way he looked, like, wow, yeah, life's so rough on you as it is. Then I felt sorry for him for his size and being in jail, and being white didn't help because Philadelphia is a chocolate city. So I hate to say it this way, but any jail is going to be a chocolate city. Just the reality. But especially in a chocolate city, the jail is going to be a chocolate city. So being a white guy in jail already puts you at a disadvantage. And being small and ugly, I just felt bad for him. So I befriended him and we played cards. And one day he got points on me or something. I hit him in the leg, and I didn't mean to hit him that hard, but I realized like more came out of me than it should have. And he was like, that really hurt. And I was just like, fuck. And I really felt bad. I really felt like shit. I didn't mean to hit him that hard. Like I could tell there was more coming out of me than it should have been. Just like, oh man, you got that point. You know what I mean? Then I felt really bad about that. And think he came to me later and he was like, that really hurt. And I apologized profusely, like, man, I'm so fucking sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Like, I don't, you know. I think a day later he came to me with some fresh laundry, which is, you know, a, a, a big deal in jail. And I was like, well, because he's working in the laundry. And I was like, well, what's this? He's like, no, it's all right, man. I just like looking out for you. And of course, I felt like the size of an ant. You know what I mean? Here I am fucking up, hitting him hard, and I didn't mean to, but it just happened. And he's bringing me laundry, talking about, I just like looking out for you, man. That's all. And it wasn't no gay thing, no nothing. I think I was just his source of sanity, you know. And so I felt like an ant, of course, as any halfway decent human being would. But I thanked him like shit. And then the next day after that, somebody came to me and was like, "Yo, you hear about your boy?" And I was like, "No." So yeah, killed himself. Like what? Yeah, he killed himself. And then the guy walked away. I found out that he had gotten his verdict. It was like 3 years in prison or something, because he like pushed his girlfriend or something. I can see him doing the same thing to her I did to him. Like probably like not meaning to be overly aggressive, but being it because you're holding so much shit in and you've been bullied, you've been hurt, and you kind of like don't realize, oh fuck, that was a little harder than it should have been. And I think that's what happened with him and her. Like he like, oh fuck, I didn't mean to do it. And I think that he explained it to me too, that it was something similar to that. Like I didn't mean, you know. And again, I'm not excusing it. I'm just saying that there are reasons for things where they aren't always just fuck it, I did this because it's bad. Like there are sometimes extenuating circumstances where even though you did something bad, it wasn't as the intent wasn't to be as bad as the result. That's a good explanation. Doesn't excuse it, but does make it a little less bad. You know what I mean? Like if I push you and you get hit by a car, I wasn't trying to murder you. I shouldn't have pushed you. I'm still liable for that, but I really wasn't trying to see you get hit by a car and die. So that's kind of what I mean. So he got sentenced and he killed himself. He hung himself in the waiting cell at the court. And I've always felt bad. Like that made that punch even worse. Like, I tore myself up over that. I'm so grateful to God that I had a chance to apologize and he forgave me. Because if that had been the last thing that happened and this poor kid killed himself, like I would have carried that like fuck. Not long after that, I was in the medical unit, and there was this old guy, like 80 years old, shriveled up little black guy, maybe 6 feet tall, 120 pounds. I mean, he's just maybe not that small, but close to it. I mean, just bony, looking like a walking skeleton, just old, wrinkled, tired. And I don't know if other people did. I'm sure at least one or two people did. I wasn't the only human being in there. There weren't a whole lot, but I wasn't the only one. There were some human beings in there. But I know that I would sometimes go down and check on him. I'm not really a caretaker. That's just not who I am. But, he was on the first floor. I was on like the second. And I knew on occasion I would go down and be like, hey, Pops, you all right? Need anything? Need a juice? You know what I mean? Just being a decent human being. And one night I went in and I checked on him like, hey, we're about to go lock down. You need anything before we lock down? You all right? Just the basic. He was like, man, I don't feel right, man. I need the doctor. Something don't feel right. But I got you. I go up to the guards and they're like, we just took him to the doctor. He's fine. Go away. So I go back down. I'm like, well, they said they just took you to the doctor. He's like, yeah, but something ain't right, man. Something ain't right. Something ain't right. Like, please help me. Please help me. So I go back up to the guards and I'm like, hey, he said, get the fuck away from here or you're just going to be something. Which basically meant leave now or we're going to take you in the cell and beat your ass. That's just the bottom line. We don't bother us with this shit again. Or, you're going to get a beat down and you're taking the risk of getting a broken jaw, a broken arm, a busted head, or just a light beat down. But even a light beat down, who wants to get beat down? Even if it's a light one. But yeah, I don't mind a few punches to the face, for no reason at all, because it's not going to accomplish anything. So I was like, I went down to him and I was like, I explained it like they said, like, leave now or it's going to be something. He's like, and he'd been around long enough where he knew what that meant. And he just looked at me like, thank you for trying it, man. I understand. It's like, don't be upset at yourself. I get it. I woke up the next morning, he was dead.
What happened?
He died overnight. Whatever it was that he was saying wasn't right, actually wasn't right. An old man died in a jail cell alone, begging for help. I carried that one.
That's such a sad thought.
I carried that one.
Yeah.
Again, this is God's mercy in my life. I know it's not about me, but I'm living my life. So God's mercy in my life is that I at least tried. I can't force the guards. I got to the point of almost getting my ass whipped, and the ass whipping would have still accomplished nothing. I'm not going to get my ass whipped for no purpose. Like, let me go get my ass whipped and still accomplish nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if it was like, hey, we'll whip your ass. If you let us whip your ass, we'll go get them help. Maybe I might have considered that. How bad ass whipping are we talking about?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, like I might have considered that. Like, are we talking like injury, or are we just talking about a sore jaw for a couple of days? Bruised ribs or broken ribs? There's a big difference between bruised and broken. You know, I might have considered that. I might have weighed my options. But if you're talking about let's whip your ass and then still ignore him, sorry, Dad. Did what I could. But I can't. That one, I had to stay myself for the day because I was ready to murder a guard. I was ready. I was that hurt. That one was rough. So it's a suicide. The one person I befriended killed himself. The other person I befriended and tried to look out for died. So yeah, that wasn't easy. So I'll share two other quick little stories. One of I guess hope and one of despair. The Catholic guys would come around and they would bring books, and I asked for a book or a textbook on microbiology, and he was like, "No, though, that's a bit too much." Which I get now, because I'm like, textbooks are like $200 fucking. He's talking about a paperback from Barnes and Noble. There's a difference here. So I get it now, but back then I wasn't thinking. But I ended up on Dostoevsky, and I was reading Dostoevsky's House of the Dead. And Dostoevsky's House of the Dead was, I don't know if you know the story of Fyodor Dostoevsky. I'm telling you very, very quickly. So he was a writer, newspaperman, whatever. He wrote some article that somebody didn't like, and they sentenced him to death. This is just how it was back then. He wrote an article, wouldn't recant it, and somebody was like, "Oh, he did this." That. They sentenced him to death, and they had him at the firing squad. They pulled the guns out, and they said, "Ready, aim, psych," and they sentenced him to like 4 years in Siberia work camp.
Jeez.
You talk about a mind fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was ready to die.
Right. And then they said psych at the last minute. You can research it. I'm not making this up. I don't.
Oh yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
So he wrote a book called The House of the Dead, which was a semi-autobiographical. Of course, he was the hero because we're always the hero in our own story. You know that. But he wrote a semi-autobiographical book about his time in the Siberian work camp. And I'm reading this book and I'm enthralled. And I'm like, oh, shit, damn, fuck, wow. And there's another guy reading like some James Bond book or something. And he asked me, he's like, well, what are you reading? Like I said, I wasn't the only human being in there. We were few and far between, but there were others. And he's like, well, what are you reading? And I'm explaining to him, well, I'm reading this book about the Siberian prison. This guy ready, aim, psych, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, how the fuck are you reading that and you're in jail? And I explained to him at the time. Now it might be different because I'm so exhausted of all of that it might be a little different. I might be where he's at now. But back then, I still had youth and life and hope. So I had a different perspective. I had a different energy. You know what I mean? I still have more ahead of me than I do behind me. So I was preparing for the ahead. And so we said, well, why are you? I was like, dude, I'm only here for a short time. I mean, they can't keep me here. It's jail. It's not prison. It's not like, I can be sentenced to it's fucking jail. Even if I max out, I'm doing a year. So it is what it is. And I said, you read your book, right? We read, 2 hours a day at most before your eyes start to hurt. You can't concentrate, 2 hours straight on average. Something like that. He said, yeah. And I said, so when you're reading, you're the hero. You got the naked women, you got the guns, you're jumping off of rooftops and you're getting celebrated by M17 and the Queen, all this other, you're like this Superman. It's like, yeah, man, it's fun. I said, what happens if you put the book down? And you look around And you could see he thought about that for a minute. I was like, what happens to the other 18 hours? I guess you're awake for like 16 hours a day or something, 18 hours. So what happens to the other 16 hours a day? And I said, dude, when I'm reading about these guys' toes falling off and them eating one potato a day, when I put this book down, I'm like, fuck, I can't wait till dinner gets here. You're looking at dinner like this garbage. I'm looking at it like, fuck, wow, food, thank God. So for me, I was finding a way to appreciate what I had because I knew it was temporary. So the suffering was temporary. So I
Yeah.
could actually look at a worse situation and I could be like, this food now looks good.
Reading about somebody else's horrors, somebody else's
Right.
struggles, somebody else's troubles that were worse than yours made you feel better.
Because I knew mine was temporary. Now, if they were permanent or if they were longer, then I couldn't, then you're stacking.
Yeah.
Then it's like you're stacking. But if they're temporary, it's like I can use this to give me strength to get through a temporary burden. I think the other thing, so you've got the deaths, you got the suicides, you got the beat downs by the jail guards, you've got the dick show for the female guard, you've got the guards. I mean, yeah, they would just pull prisoners to the side and just let them fight. You've got the guard leaving, letting me fight the guy I had to stab with my finger.
Was there, and I know this is just something everybody always asks about and thinks about, and it's one of those things that's just kind of baked into, I guess, American jail and prison culture. Was there rapes in jail?
This was just jail. So I don't think anybody besides the guy who was only there for 1 week, I don't think anyone there was hard up enough to rape. That's something that comes after you haven't had pussy for 15 years.
Yeah.
So on this journey of my time in the Philadelphia jail, now I just want to segue real quick and say the LA jail was different because it was run by sheriff's deputies. So they didn't put up with any of that nonsense because they didn't want to lose their careers. So it was a lot cleaner, a lot more controlled. Just so it was, you think you hear of the horrors of the LA jails, but the reality is, if they do exist, it's when the guards aren't around. The guards did not play that because they were deputies who invest their whole life in being deputies. So they weren't risking it for dumb shit. Philadelphia guards didn't care. It was a job to them. If they get fired as a guard, they go back to stripping the next week. They go back to working at Walmart. They really didn't give a hell. But now, there's this one last, I want to leave this one last image, which really made me understand where I was. Like everything I went through, this one simple, it may not have the same effect on others, but it had the effect on me. And I remember thinking, this is where I am. Like, this is it. This is where I am. There was a white guy who, muscular guy, strong. You think of like these different variations of white people. And he was like the white person that was kind of hood, not trying to be black, but kind of like that same sort of ghetto, low budget. You know what and I don't know how to explain it. Not redneck, but just that the kind of you could see hanging. Like if you see a bunch of black guys and there's this one white guy with a shaved head, the wife beater, kind of a Kensington person, if you know Kensington, Philadelphia, or maybe if you see those, but yeah, just kind of hoodish, but not trying to be black, just white hood. And he was muscular, strong, healthy. And he was in there for some short time. And, you could tell he'd been there before because he said, it's like, I've been here before. And I've learned my lesson. I'm tired of this routine. And, he's got the whole story down pat. When I get out, I don't know if he had a new baby or not, but I think it's like, I'll be my girl and our baby or a kid or whatever and get a job. And he was just for like 2 weeks straight telling all the good things. And like I said, he's young, built, strong. I mean, worst case scenario, you can go out and work demolition, make some money, learn a trade, hang around a construction site for a year. By the time you're done, you're freaking an apprentice carpenter. You don't even have to go to fucking school. Just hang around a construction site, taking out the trash and watch the carpenters. Like, hey, can you teach me let me watch you for half an hour a day. You know what I mean? You can build a life just taking out trash, you know? All the opportunity was there. So some people started believing him. And when he left, there was all there. He was like I said, he was ghetto, so he fit in. He was one of the boys. And when he left, there was a couple people who were like, yeah, whatever. We'll see him soon. Or he'll come back, or blah, blah, blah. And the other ones like, yeah, this your chance, dog. We believe you. We got you back, man. Right as when you, blah, blah, blah. And so he left one morning. Motherfucker came walking back in the door later that night.
Shit.
Later that fucking night. Here he come walking in with a sack. The sack is the bed and the toiletries. He come walking in with a sack underneath his arm. And I just saw that. My heart just, I don't know if I believed him or wanted to. I was just sort of like a non-emotionally committed observer. But when he came walking in, it just dawned, like that was the moment it dawned on me. This is where I am. See, one thing about jail, why it's comfortable for people, it's like Schrodinger. Wow, it really is. Oh, fuck, I'm about to do something you've never seen, you've never heard before. You know what jail is? You know what jail really is for a lot of people?
What's that?
Schrodinger's box for humans. Everything is possible until you actually get released from jail.
Lots of dreams, lots of plans.
Everything's possible.
Yeah.
And some people actually find more comfort in jail because in jail, everything's possible because you don't actually have to do it. The cat is dead and alive at the same time when you're sitting in jail.
It's a good way to put that. It's like Shawshank. You get institutionalized.
But that's part of the institutionalization that I don't think, or at least I don't know that I've looked at it that way before. Actually, I didn't put the correlation of Schrodinger, but I've definitely looked at it before. That while you're in there, the dreaming is the life you look forward to.
Yeah, that's what keeps you going. And then when the fucking time comes, nope.
You don't know what you lost.
You don't want to, or you don't want to do the work, or now that it's not a fantasy, it doesn't seem that attractive. Maybe it seems uncomfortable.
The problem with a lot of humanity, and this is across the board, and I think a lot of people don't really think about this, although the conversation has been had when it comes to love and marriage. A lot of people talked about this when it comes to love and marriage, but they haven't talked about it when it comes to the rest of life too. A lot of people want, but don't actually want to have.
They want to chase it, you think?
The feeling of wanting it. Like, give an example how I talk about the marriage. People say they look forward to the wedding, but not the marriage. They romanticize love, but not the actual work that goes into it. Every other weekend, they're in love with someone new.
Yeah.
Now, put that in the rest of life. I want this. I want the wanting, but I don't want the having. It's in a lot of parts of life, in a lot of aspects of life. I want the wanting. People get money, then they spend it all. They wanted the money, but then they're actually more comfortable being broke because then they can want again. They want the job, but they don't want to actually do the work. They want the wanting.
Yeah, being hungry. You know, that hunger. Hemingway said that. Hunger was good discipline. You know, and he was talking about actual hunger. He wasn't even being metaphorical.
Yeah, but people fool themselves into believing they actually want to be full. And so they keep themselves hungry at all costs while complaining about how much they want to be full.
Yeah.
I mean, the love is a perfect example. I want someone to love me so bad. I want to be in love. But then when they get it, it's like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you finally got that beautiful bird and you put it in a cage.
There it is.
Yeah. And it's not so beautiful anymore that it's not wild. Now that you have it, what do you do now? Okay.
So much of life is actually that.
Yeah.
People have conditioned themselves to want the wanting, but they don't actually want the having. The jail is pretty much a microcosm of that. A whole society built upon wanting, but not wanting to have.
Yeah.
The man lasted one day. 2 weeks of all the goony, goo-goo, beautiful, perfect Shakespearean, just soliloquies of what his life is going to be. He didn't last one day.
Yeah. It's like, what would they do without hope, though? You know? Because that place would be miserable without some kind of hope, wouldn't it be?
Is it really hope, though?
Yeah,
that's
a dream, a fantasy.
But listen, hope is based upon the understanding or the prerequisite of actually wanting to have it. Like, I hope to find love means I actually do want love. So is it really hope?
Well, is that like, we don't know what we got till it's gone, and we don't know what we want until we have it? Is it like one of those just human nature things?
I think it's the antithesis of hope. I think it's just one big empty lie to ourselves. I'm not really hoping for this because I don't really want it.
Yeah.
I don't really actually want it. So is that hope? When it's something you don't actually want, what would that be then?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of a common word for that. A good way to explain
And I am too,
that.
And I'm pretty darn good with my wordage.
Yeah. I speak pretty sometimes.
Yeah. David Sedaris.
Yeah. How the fuck? You actually knew that.
I do that too.
Me talk pretty one day. Me talk pretty one day. That's what he said.
I do that to you all the time, don't I?
Yeah. He's one of my favorites. I loved him.
Yeah.
He was great.
I love that. What the fuck? That was like your friend with the air traffic controllers.
Yeah.
Hey, are they like, why the fuck do you know that?
You're a bit like me. You know a whole lot about nothing.
But the difference is you're successful. I'm a pathetic fucking loser. So, you're big, tall, dark, handsome with the beautiful life and the beautiful wife and the successful life, and here I am with a psychotic landlord, and I'm about to move out of my little trailer that they're going to repossess in a few months because I can't afford it. So, yeah, you and I are quite different.
But probably a lot more similar than you'd think.
It's kind of weird though. Sometimes looking at me like I'm that one that there's something missing, and with every gift that God could give a man except height, every gift humanly possible except height, and I'm at the very bottom of existence. It's like, what piece is missing?
Yeah.
It's too late now. I'm never going to get much more. But I look at that sometimes and I wonder, like, what piece was missing? That this man who was born with literally every single gift a human being can ask for in abundance.
Yeah.
Except height. And I'm barely existing.
On the next episode, we finally confront Malachi and we get to the bottom of those mysterious accusations that a listener emailed into our show. Spoiler alert, he's not too happy about it.
Like, you're going to destroy my life on a lie with a sex charge? A sex charge? Do you know what that does to a man? Like, seriously? If I did it, I'd own it. Fuck that. This bitch has been stalking me ever since.
You won't want to miss it. The Redacted Podcast is produced by myself, Matt Bender, and my wife, Pamela Bender. Make sure to go out there and give us a like, a share it with your friends, rate us. Every little bit helps. Thanks for tuning in.